Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build the entire solar system, starting with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth with its moon, Mars and its two moons, a small section of the asteroid belt with Ceres, Jupiter and its moons, along with its rings, Saturn, moons, Uranus, Neptune, along with Triton, and then Pluto all the way over here on the far end. So without further ado, let's investigate how we go about this, along with, well, ridiculous fun facts about these things along the way. Starting off, make sure that the area that you want to build the solar system in, well, doesn't have a bunch of things in the way. If you have tall structures, rockets, UFOs, other planets, or a pre-existing planet that was literally just built for the tutorial, well, make sure to be mindful of them. Anyways, right here, I have myself a yellow wool sphere, and this is built with a diameter of about 25, and you can see, well, it's pretty generic. Technically, this would suffice for the sun, but you're probably wondering, how am I supposed to build the sphere? Well, here, just open the description, and there will be images on screen to help you. You want to click on the Linktree link, and then it will link you to a website that has a built-in sphere generator, so that way you don't even have to listen to what I say. You just need to make sure that you have the dimensions and then the right blocks. So if I say 15 by 15, you can be like, haha, I'm gonna build it larger. Of course, I'm not responsible for any mishaps that might be a result of that, but still. Anyways, we have the sun here, and it's pretty bland. So first, we need to add a little bit of texturing to it. Some yellow concrete will work really well. If it's all completely uniform, then it'll look really weird. But if we add a little bit of splotches to it, imperfections, things like that, well, that improves it. And potentially, if you're skilled enough at doing this, you might be able to sneak in some glowstone. Because here's a problem. If you just build the sun like this. Here, how about we turn it to nighttime? And you can see, wow, very illuminant sun. This is going to be what provides the light for everyone. So I think it goes without saying, try to incorporate things like glowstone, or, not verdant, you can do some ultra frog lights too. And the thing is, well, blends in a little bit better than plain glowstone. So stuff like that is really useful. Try incorporating it into the build, add the yellow splotches, and then you'll have a nice glowing sphere. With all those ultra frog lights and yellow concrete blobs mixed in, you can see it's a lot more interesting than just yellow wool. And well, that's kind of the point. And to some of you, well, this is finished. However, I'm not some of you. In fact, I'm actually myself, surprisingly. But anyways, what we want to do from here is take it a little bit further. So get out some stained glass, and yeah, I think yellow will be good enough. I don't think we need to go to orange. And all you need to do from here is coat the entire thing in white stained glass. And this might seem like an odd choice, but trust me, it certainly will work. All you need to do is completely encase, just like this, go down. Yeah, nothing terribly interesting. Might be a little difficult in survival, but still, once it's completely encased, it will, well, blur some of the details in there, and thus, well, make it a bit more interesting to look at. Because you can't tell what really is going on in there, adds a little bit to the mystique. You know, the sun's kind of mysterious. I love my screaming ball of plasma in the sky that gives Earth life. Yeah, surprisingly it would be 70 decibels if sound could travel through space, so have fun with a lawnmower outside if you live in that reality for some reason. With the double glass layering over this, the white and the yellow, you can see the sun is glowing. It looks pretty much like the sun. I don't know what it looks like actually, I haven't seen it before. But this is roughly what it should look like. Anyways, well, we have the star. So pretty much, we need to move on to the first planet. Well, planet is debatable by definition because of a little thing called hydrostatic equilibrium. In this case, I'm not going to explain it because I prefer having a viewership over 30%. Anyways, we want to go a few blocks out. We don't have to worry too much about elliptical orbits in this because, you know, that's just nerdy talk, as if I'm not a nerd already. But anyways, Mercury would be the first planet, and you can make it about this size. So pulling out a build tool for this, gonna say stone for this. And, well, of course, you want to make it a little bit different from this, but this is roughly what Mercury would look like. Of course, you can use the generator. If you're somehow using structure gel like me, then chop off the corners. Who designed that? But anyways, this is roughly the size of Mercury, and this can also work for the moon. Basically, Mercury is a big rock, and it doesn't have too much going for it. It certainly has some interesting things, but otherwise, just mix it in with a few extra stones like tuff. Right here, I have the tiny little rock we call Mercury, and you can see the bottoms are covered in cobbled deep slate. This is because Mercury's poles actually don't get sunlight. Then I have some tuff radiating off it, and then some extra andesite for texturing. And it's actually not very complicated, it's just a rock. An interesting one once you look into it, but otherwise just a rock. Now, it's time for Venus. Okay, starting off, well, you can see it's a bit bigger. This is actually the average color of Venus if you're to take a false color image. So essentially, you can see, well, it's kind of orange, a little too orange. So basically, what you want to do from here is, one, choose a size for Venus. I chose the 13 blocks wide. This will be the same size as Earth, because Venus and Earth are roughly the same size. If need be, you can increase Earth's size to 15 if you really want to get nitpicky with that. Or you can reduce this to 11. Regardless, what we need is some yellow terracotta, and you can see how it's kind of muted. We need that brown shade into it. So kind of mix it into here, make it maybe a little swirly or something. I don't know, but you can look at real images. Make sure to type in Venus planet though. Right here, I have Venus, and you can see, well, it's certainly something. It looks like a mess, mainly because it is a cloudy mess. It's hotter than Venus because of the greenhouse effect. And, well, not much else to say besides the fact that yellow terracotta splotched around with the occasional brown terracotta in order to act as those crash points for meteors, and then some normal terracotta to just, provide a little bit of extra texturing where there isn't yellow. Nothing too interesting for the poles, and, well, this is Venus. Not the most interesting planet, but hey, it's recognizable, especially when in conjunction with other planets. Now it's time for everyone's least favorite water world, Earth. So anyways, it's pretty obvious what we need here. So get out your concretes, and I'm just gonna go complete pastel for this one. And, well, yellow, white, and of course lime. And then let's just start off with making the top white, because of course, well, Arctic, and then we do the same for the bottom, Antarctic. Then choose a point, pull out a world map, and roughly transpose what the continents' locations are onto this globe. Preferably choose a nice flat side to begin. So let's say this side right here is roughly the 0 GMT line. In other words, this is where Britain is. And if we put Britain and Europe here, then America would be over here, China over here. Actually, I think I got this messed up, but essentially, choose a point to base everything around. Alright, here I have the Earth, and you can see, misplaced blocks here and there. But essentially, it is quite difficult to figure out what's going on, and that's just because of the scale. Essentially, this is Europe, that would be Greenland, this is Africa. We can all identify this as Antarctica. This would probably be the Middle East, with that being, well, the Gulf, and right there being the Red Sea. Right here is meant to be India, although at way higher than it should be. Hopefully these being the Himalayas makes sense, with this being Central Asia. And then let's just hope anyone can see this and say, ah yes, Australia, and ah yes, New Zealand. And then right here we have roughly what's China, this being Taiwan, and then Alaska roughly, South America, North America. Is it identifiable? Probably not, but at least you can tell that there's an attempt made. Now, usually most people can remember there's something interesting about the Earth. That's its giant moon for a planet like this. Hence, what we need is, well, the moon. The moon can really just be a copy of Mercury, except smaller. I recommend making the moon a cube though. Not because, well, Minecraft, but because we really want this. Well, I mean, technically you could. Actually, I think I might do that. But anyways, just a small rock like that, maybe make some of it andesite, and that's all you'll really need. And then we can move on to Mars, which is going to be a little bit more interesting because, well, it has 2 moons. Now we have the red planet in place, and you can see red terracotta. If you look up Mars, you're going to see 2 different images, and that's simply because, well, stuff's colors works weirdly in space. For the purposes of this video, everything has been in false color, as in what we'd imagine it to see. Anyways, what we want here is, well, to decorate it a little, and we can use a little bit of red sandstone for that. But there's something I just forgot. Well, the moon right here, I'm using gravel, and if you know things about Minecraft, you know, Gearsaw, why are you cheating? And to you, I say, haha, I'm using string, or as the game declares it, tripwire. Yeah, someone commented about that, pretty funny. But anyways, the red planet could use, well, a bit more red things, and by red I mean orange. So pretty much, you can add some bands like this, maybe some darker parts, more of the craters that we had on Venus earlier. So maybe some brown terracotta potentially, stuff like that, in order to make it look a bit more volcanic. Ironically, Mars is volcanically dead, as in, Mars doesn't really have volcanic eruptions. The world is a bit desolate. Very interesting history. It probably had rivers as well, but it doesn't have any anymore, and it's all covered in rust. So anyways, covering this in some red sandstone, and then we'll have to worry about Phobos and Deimos, the moons of not Mercury, Mars. Right here, you can see, well, Mars is complete, not very complex, added some ice to the top and bottom to be accurate, because Mars simply has less water, they're smaller than Earth's. Then, for the moons, well, Phobos and Deimos have been turned into tough and light gray concrete respectively. Actually, Deimos should be orbiting a bit further away like this. Of course, they don't have to be to scale, otherwise they'd probably be touching the surface. And now, we're done with the rocky planets. So now we have the awkward question, asteroid belt or no asteroid belt? And I'm gonna say none. Although, if you want to, what I recommend doing is adding a bunch of light gray concrete, tough stone, floating gravel, andesite, all of that in some sort of disk around the sun. You'd have to compress the planets really close together to get it to a reasonable size to build, especially in survival. And then somewhere in there, you'd want to stick pretty much a copy of the moon. That would be the dwarf planet Ceres. But since I'm not doing the asteroid belt myself, well, that's not going to be an issue. And now for the gas giants. So we can see the sun, that's pretty large. Make sure to get a new measurement of your star, just to make sure. And then from there, what you need to do is reduce it by a few blocks, and then you can build Jupiter. Because here's the thing, if we're going by a complete scale, all of these would probably be the equivalent of buttons, glass panes, slabs, and maybe a whole block for some. Jupiter would probably be the size of the moon, and that's it. So, of course, we're going to need Jupiter to be close to the size of the star. Now, right here, I ended up making the asteroid belt anyways. Ceres turns out was a bit smaller than I was expecting, but since it would be unnoticeable if it was just one block, I decided to make it slightly larger. Inaccurate, but oh well. And then, a little past it. Okay, well, we have the Jupiter in the room, Jupiter. And here's the thing about Jupiter. It has a very distinct look. You can't just squiggle lines over it or roughly get the shape. No, you kind of have to be a bit accurate. So you should look at the various blocks you have in your arsenal. So of course light gray concrete works well, but something that's rather unexpected for most people probably would be the usage of white terracotta. Remember, Jupiter is banded, something like this. And you'd want these to go around. We can worry about the red spot later. That's literally just a few pieces of red sandstone. Anyways, make these go around first, and then continue comparing images of what you have built, and then with Google's images of Jupiter. If need be, look up what other people have done for their Jupiter builds. Although I'm really the only person who's done a solar system demonstration like this, so pixel art and other demonstrations can be incredibly helpful for the building process. So go around, build these in, and then eventually you'll have all the stripes in. With Jupiter now built with roughly coherent lines, it's certainly recognizable as Jupiter, but could do a little bit more. And how we can do this? Simple. Make these little bands oscillate up and down. So basically, it goes up here, and then we can have the bands disrupt that, and then it goes down. Okay, that's a little bit too much, but generally we want this effect going on. And then we now have another interesting scenario. Now that we're working with the gas giants, and especially Jupiter and Saturn in this case, they have rings. And the rings can just be simple glass. Maybe something like light gray glass, but more importantly, they have a lot of moons. Like, a lot. Fortunately, only some of them are rounded. For this, I'm only going to be counting rounded moons barring Mars's case, since otherwise this video would be endless with me placing random pieces of gray blocks. So, as in, I'm going to be using Io, Europa, and Cladius, stuff like that. Anyways, make those lines go up and down, and then add the ring system. The ring system should probably only be one block wide, and if you're confused how to do it, in the description there is a circle generator. It's under the shape generator. You can use that in order to build your circle very easily. With the rings now in place, I'm not doing the outer rings, only the most prominent one over by the middle. You can see it's just some gray stained glass. It's, well, 2 blocks away at any point. Technically you could just measure it, but if you're doing exactly as I say and counting the blocks, not necessary, but if you really wanted to, this is 7, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 7. And then you extend that outwards. So feel free to pause. Here is an overhead view if you're interested. Anyways, I'm not actually touching Jupiter's pole, unlike Saturn's, but anyways, what we want to do is the Galilean moons, and measuring out their diameters, and by measuring I mean looking at Wikipedia. This is not the correct block, but still, we need Io, Ganymede, Europa, and a few others. And here's the thing, Io is actually roughly the same size as the moon, so we should depict it as basically moon but yellow. Something like this. Keep it very close to the inner ring system, because the volcanic eruptions of Io are what supply these rings apparently. The outer rings are done by random asteroids. Well, not random, but moons that aren't important. Then we do this 4 more times for the other important moons. With the little blurring on Jupiter itself, it's a little messy, but I mean, how well are you keeping together a giant mass filled with clouds? Anyways, here is Io. It's covered in black stone buttons to represent the volcanism, and because I cannot cover it in green terracotta. So right there, that's Io. This would be Europa, which, well, it's an ice world, and not like the fancy water ice. No, it's methane. Kinda sucks. Well, anyways, now we have an awkward situation. So we have Mercury over there, and right here would be Ganymede. And the thing is, Ganymede is actually larger than Mercury in real life. In fact, if Jupiter just disappeared, well, Ganymede would probably just be another planet. So it was likely stolen. And then Callisto right here has very little radiation, is very far out, and is very dark, hence why it's made completely of mud. You can change its color to deep slate if need be. So right here we have the Jovian system, and it's complete, and well, Io and Europa are basically the same spot orbitably, but still, like, it doesn't really matter. We have, limited space. Now it's time for Saturn, so hooray, it's time to build way too many rings. With the Jovian system now complete, it's time for Saturn. And, well, Saturn's interesting. By the way, just a little bit of assistance with block measurements if you really wanted to copy. But basically, the problem with Saturn is, well, of course, it has a bunch of rings, but also its color is kind of strange. And the closest thing to that would be the mushroom pore block. However, it's recently come to my attention that this texture right here is basically impossible to get in Bedrock Edition on any reasonable scale. So unfortunately, I can't use this block, but if you were on Java Edition, you can repeat what I just did by placing the block in order to create a pore texture. so that way you can use that incredibly convenient color. Anyways, now for a poreless version, as in you can do this on bedrock, here is roughly the gradient we want. We want to go from light gray concrete to brown mushroom. That should be decently easy to get. Then oak planks, sandstone, and then maybe right about here we just invert the thing and go right back down the colors. And it's not a perfect solution, but it's certainly a way to build Saturn. Also, make sure you don't put anything on the top or bottom, because here's the thing, there's also a random hexagon. I don't know why there's a hexagon on Saturn. I'm not a spaceologist. But yes, there is a randomly like a blue hexagon on there, so I recommend using cyan terracotta once you know what I'm talking about. You can look up Saturn hexagon on Google if you're a little confused, but basically there's a hexagonal storm on the top of Saturn, or the bottom, I'll check. With the gradient added along with the storms on the top and bottom, well, it's time for the ring system. And I built this once already, but deleted it. For reference, this is, it's not here anymore, but anyways, here you need to make concentric circles. Of course, the link tree in the description has circle generators as well. It has pretty much anything you'll ever need for building. And then here, making the circle just using a quick command. And then right here, you need to make sure that it's not actually touching Saturn, because otherwise it would just fall in. So like this, and then slowly destroy the blocks. It's going to be much more annoying in survival, but trust me, don't try cutting corners in survival. I've done it before, it does not work well. So like that, now we have 2 blocks thick, and then from here, we want to do things like going to smooth sandstone, going to oak, stuff like that. Luckily, I've already built this before, so I know the rough order, and thus you can copy that pretty easily. Right here, using the circle method and filling in anything outside to the inside. Basically, if I made a circle, well, everything on the inside would get filled. Well, you can see a nice circular ring system. And it's perfectly symmetrical, so we aren't going to have any issues. And this means we can start doing the moons. And the moons aren't super interesting, although you have ones that could support life like in Cladius. Still, it's just going to be a lot of normal stuff, and then we have Titan, the elephant in the room, which is actually just really far away, but it has oceans, interestingly, of methane. Yeah, that's a recurring theme. Everything's just frozen methane out here. Right here, I have the Saturnian system, and well, the rings are here, and all the important moons. Right here, we have Mimas, which looks like the Death Star, hence why I put a button on it, and it has a subsurface ocean. Whether it has life is unknown. Then right here, we have Europa, which is mostly ice, and it has a giant ocean, 100 kilometers deep. It probably has life, but nothing too advanced. The best you could probably get is maybe some fish if we're especially lucky. Then we have 2 moons here, Tethys and Ione. One of them has the Death Star crater looking thing on it, but nowhere near as notable as Mimas. Both of these are just generic ice worlds, there's not too much to say about them. And then right here, we have Raya, which actually might have a ring system, which is really weird. But then we get to the interesting one, Titan. And this one has oceans of methane, it has a complete atmosphere, and in the future, it might have life as the sun heats up. And then over here, this one I forgot the name of. All I know is that it's at an angle, like a 14-degree angle from Saturn. And there's not too much interesting about it besides a massive ridge in the middle of it. And thus, that's Saturn done. And now it's time for Uranus and Neptune. And Uranus is actually much easier, it doesn't have a ton of bands, and it has a very simple ring, which is completely vertical because Uranus is on its side. And Neptune is pretty much the same and only has one significant orbital. For Uranus, here is the interesting thing. Well, it's rotating the wrong way. Yeah, so its rings of course follow suit. Technically the rings would probably be at like a 6 to 14 degree angle, but this is Minecraft. We're not doing diagonals. So anyways, right here I have a 29 by 29 circle, which makes up the ring system. You can count the blocks. I'm pretty sure I've literally just used the same dimensions as Earth. So it's only 4 times larger, and you know how this is getting weird on the scale. But anyways, this is the radius, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So radius of 8 would make this. So right here, this would be a total of 15 blocks wide, so the rings are decently far out. Anyways, from here, the moons are not that interesting. Just make sure that they're like maybe stone, concrete, stuff like that. You can look up pictures of its moons, but they should be orbiting vertically. That's all that's really interesting about this. And then do the exact same thing for Neptune, but with blue concrete instead of light blue. Right here, I have Neptune. I did more rings on it. These ones aren't very interesting. And then I used some blue terracotta to make the big spot on it. And otherwise, Neptune's not actually that interesting. Then we have Triton, which of course is larger than Mercury yet again, of course throwing Mercury's actual planet status into debate for the umpteenth time. And we can see, well, it's just andesite. There's nothing really to talk about. And also, there just isn't enough data. Yeah, you could texture it, but there just isn't much on Triton. We know that it's probably stolen from the Kuiper Belt. Well, it just was. And, well, yeah. Speaking of Kuiper Belt objects, we have Pluto here. Its minor moons are not depicted, only Charon and Pluto itself. So, you can see they're roughly similar sizes, hence why Pluto actually orbits Charon. Yeah, they spin around each other. None of them actually orbit each other, they just kind of spin around. And you can place Pluto anywhere or exclude it. It's not very important anymore because it's a dwarf planet. And technically, it does go between Uranus and Neptune. In fact, the orbits intersecting, well, vertically, Pluto misses Neptune by quite a bit. In fact, it's more likely to accidentally get stolen by Uranus instead. Anyways, we have those, so it's time to look at this place now that it's done. And at night, well, it's very dark. So let's turn it to night vision mode. And we can see here, well, we have Neptune, we have all this. Of course, a bunch of gas giants. You could put everything here if you wanted to, but this is a decently okay scale. And it's all the major things in the solar system up to Pluto. So no Kuiper Belt, no Sedna, none of that. We don't need to do every single centaur or comet in this. But still, we had the Sun, Mercury, Venus, then Earth and its moon, Mars with its 2 moons, a very small cut of the asteroid belt with Ceres, then we have Jupiter with Io, Europa, stuff like that, and then over here we have Saturn, which has a bunch of things, and when I said Europa, I meant Enceladus, oops. Well, we have a bunch of things surrounding Saturn, then we have Uranus with much less interesting things, stolen Triton with Neptune, and then Pluto. And it ends right about here. Technically, you could go even further out. You could go thousands of blocks away and put things like sednoids, but let's be honest, they're too small and we don't have enough info. And of course, well, this is a very long video already. So if you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.